other issue had to do with sample outcome versus population outcome. And so, okay, you do whatever you like in any, you have a sample or test data or training data or whatever, and you come up with an algorithm. And so how applicable is that to the population at large? Or is there real world evidence that it does what you said it was going to do in the lab?
Yeah, so they did. Yeah, go ahead.
Anthony, you want to respond?
Yeah, I'm just going to make a quick point about the black box. I personally think it's a little bit overreached, because I think, Arlen, I know you're tired of this example, but I deal with pacemaker patients several times a week. I couldn't draw the engineering aspects of the pacemaker, but I do test it, I do trust it. And I think somehow we need to get to that sweet spot between explainability and functionality. But I think it takes testing, right? So I think maybe rather than expecting clinicians to understand a deep learning algorithm, I think I would advocate that we do something that they can do, which is use it, test it, confirm it, trust it if they can. And I think that's a better approach. No one expects clinicians to all of a sudden understand algorithms or hire people to understand it. So I think we have to have maybe a shift in mentality about the black box.
Okay,
I agree with that.
Erica Dillard, do you want to ask unmute yourself and introduce yourself and ask a question?
Hi, thank you. I appreciate it, Arlen. Hi, Ali. We've talked before in the past. This is Erica from Memphis. I wanted to just ask a question.
Wait, stop a minute. Could you tell folks who you are?
Oh, yeah, sure. So I am a postdoc fellow here in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm doing a fellowship called Patents to Product. I did 5 years of neurosurgery in Philly before I came here to do this program. So I am creating a company that is trying to address postoperative complications by using similar technology, just in terms of AI. Specifically focused on whether or not a patient is developing a venous clot after procedure, such as hip and knee replacement. So we're going to be trying to develop some predictive algorithms to that end. So this is really interesting to me. It's new for me, so I really appreciate this talk. This is my first time attending the office hours. And also, I wanted to say that we are thinking about, or in the process of creating a chapter here for SoPE. So that will be something that hopefully you guys will get in the future to attend some of our beginning activities as we go forward. So, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for doing that. So do you want to ask your question?
Sure. So my question is, in terms of AI specific technology in the healthcare field, is a pre-submission with FDA required? And if not, is this something that will actually help cut down on the time when you do go forth to do your regular submission? And then a little bit off of that is, are there a lot of costs that are associated with doing that pre-submission in the beginning?
Yeah, hey Erica, good to hear your voice again. So good questions. My understanding that it is not required, however, it's highly advised. Because you can have the perfect plan that you think is the perfect plan, and then you meet with the FDA and they will tell you, no, actually we want you to use, like, for example, a different predicate device. Let's say you're doing a 510K, which means you have to have a predicate device on paper that you're claiming equivalency. So they might tell you, no, we don't agree with this predicate device, for example. You have to use a different predicate device, and changing the predicate device will probably change your clinical trial and your statistical plan. So I think it's very important to meet with FDA as early as possible. And as early as possible, I think it's right after you have your preliminary results of whatever it is that you're developing. And then you are able to be able to properly power your clinical trial and have very specific data on that. And there's really no cost involved with it. You just have to, the cost is in the preparation, but the FDA does not charge you, to my understanding, any cost, or if they do, it's nothing significant.
And
So
so
how do
there's
you,
really no downside of doing a pre-submission, really. I mean, it gives you more information
There
going
is no
forward.
downside.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There is no downside. Yeah.
and before we move on to another topic, so just where the rubber meets the road. So how do you get to these folks? You go to the FDA website, you say, because you're gonna get a different person depending on whatever it is you're trying to develop. So how do you do that? How do you get in front of these folks?
So you get an FDA consultant, and he will be the one responsible for your regulatory strategy. You can't do it as a clinician. I do not recommend you taking over the regulatory consultant role because there's a lot of details and information there. So yes, you need a good regulatory consultant to come up with the plan. Look at your device. What are you developing? Research what would be a good predicate device, and come up with a specific regulatory plan. And that person or that group will be the ones responsible for putting the packet together for the pre-sub meeting, submitting it to the correct department or section in the FDA.
Yeah, I wonder if the audience could mute their microphones, please. So give us some advice on finding an FDA consultant. What's that cost?
It's very variable. It depends on who is the consultant and how many consultants you're gonna have. It's for us, it was all about connections and asking the right people who would they recommend. We were lucky we found a consultant who has over 25+ year experience in the device development world, and had prior success rates with getting 510Ks approved for computer-aided devices or CAD devices. So you just have to ask people, get recommendations, reach out, read CVs, research who are you hiring, and
or you can hire a consultant to find a consultant.
Or you can hire a consultant to find a consultant.
Yeah. The other resource is the Regulatory Affairs Professional Society, RAPS. And I posted the website on the chat. And I mean, that gives you a list of, in every state, people who basically are, there's a certification process, and just like in medicine, letters after your name, all that stuff. Of course, that doesn't tell you who to hire, but at least it puts you in the ballpark, and then you can start snooping around, talking to people, and who would you use, all that stuff. But yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, it's
Arlen,
good
maybe
start with the list.
Maybe is this worth, unless you have it already, is this worth a little section on your website, on the SoPE website?
Yeah, I mean, it's part of the conversation. I mean, because this always comes up. I mean, it's unfortunately, when you're trying to get an idea to a patient or obviously commercialize something, you have to go through a regulatory pathway. And most folks are minimally informed about the nuts and bolts and ins and outs and who do you need to know and how does it work and all that. Unfortunately, there's a misperception that, is there a way I can avoid the FDA? And then you run into therontology. That's not a good idea if you have to get regulatory approval. You don't want to tug on Superman's cape, and you don't want to ask for forgiveness instead of permission. So it's part science, it's part art, but you just have to have awareness that you need to do this. How you do it and whether you need to do it are two separate questions. So the short answer to your question is yes. And we try to, and that's in our organization and network are such people. I mean, that's why they join us, because they're looking to contribute and get clients. So that's,
well, I had the pleasure of working with the FDA indirectly through the AMA, and the FDA stance is absolutely what Arlen's saying, which is we want to be your partner from the very beginning, even in the design phase, because that I think saves you a lot of headaches later. Because and why not? Why wouldn't you want to? So
right. And it's a government service, and it saves them brain damage. I mean, they want you to. They don't want garbage over the transom. They want a well thought out plan that is in alignment with how they're going to approve or disapprove of your idea. So why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
right.
They're here. They're there to help you.
Right. Yeah, I
and
mean,
not
it's
to
the old thing,
stifle
we're
your
the
progress.
government and we're here to help you, but they actually are. I mean, the FDA
You
is
do.
incredibly help, and they got a ton of stuff on their website, and you should review that before you start talking about them and just get up to speed. So you know what you're talking about.